So after a lot of consideration, and by a lot, I mean like 10 minutes in my spare time, I decided to just go ahead and cover both of these new episodes of Amphibia at the same time. In part because while there are things to say about them, there's not a ton to say about them, aside from their lore connections and some of the humor stuff, but that tends to get repetitive, and also because, cynically, videos that are at least 10 minutes do better on YouTube. What are you going to do? That said, today we're talking about the episodes The Ballad of Hopediah Plantar and Ann Hunter. And I gotta say, right out the gate, Ann Hunter is very interesting, because the shot of Ann with the glowing blue arrow and the shots of glowing psychic floaty head Sprig from the trailer are from that episode, and neither one of them happened in the context that I expected. But let's start with the first of the two, The Ballad of Hopediah Plantar. Did we know that Sprig was a musician and I just forgot about that? It's possible that we did and I just forgot about it, because I haven't rewatched season 1 in its entirety again yet. But he is composing ballads about the fantastical things that the family's done so far. And this leads to when the group encounters a little village of teeny tiny little froggos, Hop Pop desiring to talk up his own involvement in the climactic events of the end of season 1, telling what are essentially harmless tall tales about his own abilities and accomplishments. And they would have remained harmless, except that there's an evil gang of, I think they're supposed to be toads, maybe, who terrorize this village of tiny little froggos. And now they expect Hop Pop to defeat this gang for them. And yeah, Anne probably could have taken care of him herself, but in order to preserve his image, they try to set up a little fake encounter where Hop Pop seems to defeat them single-handedly. In the end, though, they aren't defeated until the little froggos are inspired to rally and defend themselves. And they do credit Hop Pop and his example with that inspiration, and it's a fun little episode. I liked the little village. I liked getting to hear the tall tales. I even liked their little strategy for how to make Hop Pop seem tougher than he was. It was pretty effective, and it showed that the villains weren't just brutes when they were able to see through it. These were clever villains. Overall, though, this was one of the less impressive episodes of the show. I think it just felt like the kind of story that could have been told in practically any other kids' show, which, I mean, Amphibia does that a lot, don't get me wrong. They add their trademark humor and characters to a lot of pretty conventional plots. It's just this one, for whatever reason, maybe it's just my own personal taste, felt a little more conventional than most. I will say, however, that it's super interesting how I think they wove some of the lore into this episode. When the little froggos, I can't remember what they were called, or if they were called anything in the context of the episode, I apologize. But when the little froggos finally rally and they get all vicious, their eyes glow a shade of red. Every single one of them. Which supports an idea I've been having lately, that the people of Amphibia can tap into this mystical energy. They just aren't always aware of it, because it's the same kind of glow. It's not the same color glow, but it's the same kind of glow that Anne's eyes get. And it seemed to almost match the kind of glow that we saw from the pinkish red sword in the trailer, right? And I have been thinking that different colored glows mean different things, and this reddish color tied to aggression would make sense. We also get another bit at the end where we see the machine created by the factory in the previous episode still following the Plantars, though we get a distant shot of it this time. We aren't able to see many details. The next episode, Ann Hunter, it turns out the journey is taking longer than Hop Pop thought, which is very unsettling, to say the least, since he's the one who is supposed to understand the world outside the valley best, and therefore they prepared everything around his knowledge and expectations. But it's taking longer than expected, so they're running out of food, And so Sprig decides that he's going to have to hunt for food because apparently he's a really good hunter, because apparently their family has a hunting technique that involves this weird, mesmerizing dance. And Anne goes off with him because she wants to hunt too. She has a little fantasy of herself being an expert hunter, and that's where we get the shot of the glowing arrow, which was a bummer that it was a stinking daydream and not something that actually happened. But I'll talk about that in a second. And she isn't really impressed by the way that Sprig goes about it. You could tell she's kind of cringing at the dance. She thinks it's kind of embarrassing. And the hunt is already shown to be successful. They come upon these little wormy things that look like cream-filled pastries, and apparently they taste wonderful. And so now I'm curious as to whether or not they actually taste like cream-filled pastries. Like, morbidly so. But anyway, they already have caught some of these things. So they already have food. And we know they can catch more. There's these things all over the place in this area. So that's not really the issue. But they do end up splitting up because Anne wants to try to hunt her own way and try to beat Sprig at his own game. And I'd be mad about this, again, if it weren't already obvious that they are going to be able to find food, because it would seem irresponsible. Instead, it's just, a fun little competition, except no, not really, because the entire Plantar family gets captured by this weird lion scorpion thing, and now Anne has to save them single-handedly, and that's when glowy head Sprig appears in order to guide her and remind her of all the things that Sprig taught her when he was teaching her his hunting abilities, so that she can use them to track the creature and then free the Plantar family from it, even doing the dance herself in the end to mesmerize it, so that it will let them go and come after her instead, following into a pit trap that she derived for it. And this was a pretty freaking cool climax. The music that plays when Anne does the little dance at the end was really freaking great. And the animation for it was excellent. The creature itself was absolutely terrifying in a way that a lot of creatures in this show aren't. Usually the menace is just a big old bug. And technically this was too, but here we have a mammalian creature, or at least one that's half a mammalian creature, as the threat as well. And I don't recall that ever being the case prior to this. It does a good job of showing how there are similar threats out here, but how those threats can also be wildly different at the same time. And I also thought it was pretty neat after the previous episode where Anne stepped back and let Hop Pop take care of a situation when he was able to do so. We got an episode where Anne had to step up and protect the family herself, and did a fantastic job of it. Honestly. Like, Anne definitely could have gotten involved in the events of the previous episode and fought against that evil gang and probably mopped the floor with them pretty quickly. I would think she did just handle an anime-style Gestalt robot a couple episodes ago, right? But still, these two episodes showing that different members of the family are independently capable goes a long way towards showing us that in any situation where they're all going to have to be involved, they're all going to be able to pull their weight, if that makes sense. I also, again, think there was a little bit of lore snuck into the climax of this episode. When the rhythmic music to accompany Anne's dance starts, and we see, like, background elements contributing the sounds, one of those background elements is droplets of water falling on a trio of mushrooms, and they glow different colors, and it's that same style of effect as the other glows we've been seeing up to this point, further implying that the energy that contributes to those glows comes from the land of Amphibia itself, that it's a mystical energy that runs through the land itself. And also, while we don't see Anne's eyes glow that distinctive blue at any point when she's dancing, so there's no indication that she's drawing on the energy of the land or anything, her eyes are also closed for the entirety of the dance, and when we see the creature's predator vision, because the creature is very predator-based, like the movie monster, Predator, it's based on that. When we see its predator vision at one point focused on Anne while she's doing the dance, we see, like, energy waves coming off of her. So I think Sprig, even, at the beginning of this episode, when he was doing the dance to mesmerize the little cream puff creatures. I can't remember what they're called. I think he was drawing on that energy too. I think he might have the same kinds of powers that Anne has. It's just that the Calamity Box infused them into her and her two friends in such a way that they can call on them without actually having to know how, if that makes sense. Also, I think Floating Head Sprig, since he was wrapped in that blue glow, might have also been a manifestation of Anne's powers. That they manifested something that she would listen to, which could remind her of all the things that she was only half listening to up to that point, that could help her in her current endeavor. I even think it's possible that the glowing arrow in her daydream, while it was probably just a tease of things to come snuck in there by the animators, I think it's possible that subconsciously she included that in her daydream because she's already starting to pick up on her abilities. And also, again, at the end, we get another look at the robot. This time we get a very close-up look at it. It looks a little derpy, honestly. It's not helped by the fact that it's bumping into a tree repeatedly, but it's definitely a frog or toad-shaped robot, which is super interesting for its implications as to exactly who built that factory, because there are some theories about that going around. But again, I'm going to get into theories at a later date. I'm still working on exactly how I want to tackle that. It is coming, though. I promise. All that said, these episodes, they felt like regular series episodes. There wasn't anything particularly special about them, but they were still really solid. I can't think of a single thing to complain about in either of these episodes. The voice acting is fantastic. The sound mixing is fantastic. The score is fantastic. The stories are, at worst, only serviceable. But I thought Anne Hunter was actually pretty fantastic. Even if it was just a big Predator reference, right? And this show continues to, in very subtle ways, just through atmospheric storytelling and background details, continue to expand this world in very realistic ways. This is starting to feel more and more like a very well realized fantasy world the more we see of it. It's just, they're really good. They're consistently really good, which I'll admit is annoying in its own way, because I tend to get a lot of mileage out of episodes that I review by digging into either the uncharacteristically spectacular things they do, or the things I feel they don't do well. And in a show as consistently good as Amphibia, that's so consistently good across the board, that sticks to this consistent level of goodness, that's not really a thing I can do, right? Still, it's really fun talking about these. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What did you guys think of the Ballad of Hopediah Plantar and Anne Hunter, if you have seen them? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.